So you guys got to see food choices, yes? Did you like it? Yes. Terrific. I'm glad. We're in the top 10 on every platform I think we are playing on right now, so that's all good. Yeah, it tells you there is a great appetite for this information. So some of you might have attended the panel discussion last night, and one of the things we talked about is this idea gaining traction. What does it take for this idea to gain traction? And I think we have evidence that it is gaining traction. You think about the number of books and documentaries and resources that have been made available, and they're doing well. They're all doing well, and that's so exciting. It's very exciting. So one other thing I want to mention is that Steve was mentioning that Food Over Medicine is written in a conversational style, and that was my co-author's idea. He's a marvelous writer, and he approached me with the idea of writing the book. The book was actually his idea, and he said, I think we could cover really complicated topics if we did it conversational style because it wouldn't seem so dry. I said, are you saying that what I write is dry? He says, well, you're a tiny bit academic, I'm just saying, so. But he was right about that. The conversational style did allow us to tackle a lot of things that I think we might not have otherwise tackled. And so today's lecture is based on the concept that food is medicine. I tell people all the time, when you walk into the grocery store, you stand in the produce department, you are at the pharmacy. And we have a class of drugs called cruciferous vegetables, all right? We have a class of drugs called stone fruits. We have a class of drugs called leafy greens. And what you want to do is make sure that you take some of each of the classes of drugs home with you, and you will do well. And I thought what we would do today is we would talk about diabetes a little bit because it is so common. And then I want to venture off into some conditions that we don't often talk about, like multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, Crohn's and colitis, because while we don't have as many, thankfully, Crohn's and colitis patients as we do diabetics, if you add up all the other diseases, we're talking about a significant percentage of the country that is sick today. So the right diet can save your life. And I want to talk about first genetics. This came up a little bit last night, but we are going to start with the discussion of genetics. And the good news is that your genes do not determine your health outcomes. It's not that they don't make a difference. Everybody in this room is genetically predisposed to develop a disease or 2 or 5. You've heard before, diabetes runs in my family. Heart disease runs in my family. You know what else runs in families? Eating habits. Yeah. And, in my family, for example, the women on my mother's side of the family, they all got rheumatoid arthritis. And by the way, all the women on my mother's side of the family are and were overweight. If there's an obesity gene, I've got it going on. Seriously, I'm the first normal weight woman in my family ever on my mother's side. Now, having said that, how many people think by now you've determined I'm an overachiever? Anybody? Okay. So if I decided to eat my way into obesity and rheumatoid arthritis, I'm pretty sure I could do it by next spring. All I would have to do is start eating the diet that my mother ate and some other of my relatives ate, and I too could turn on the genes for rheumatoid arthritis and obesity. But I'm choosing not to do that. The diseases we're suffering from are actually not genetically induced. They're foodborne illnesses. We think about foodborne illness, you think about E. coli. Well, I have news for you. Diabetes is a foodborne illness. You eat your way in, and you can eat your way out. Now, how do we know that that's true? One way that we know is what are called migration studies. And what this means is that you take a population of people who live in a place where the disease rate is pretty low, and they move to a place where the disease rate is different. And when people come from those places, for example, to the United States within 15 years, it used to take a generation, now it's been backed up to just 15 years, the people duplicate and have our obesity and disease rates. Now let's take an example. When Japanese people move here to the United States, do you think that they get halfway over the Pacific Ocean and there's some switch in their genes? No, they land in San Francisco and they head to Starbucks and McDonald's and some of the places that people who have diseases hang out, and they adopt our diet. So that's one way that we know. Another thing is studies of identical twins continuously show that in most instances, difference in diet and lifestyle patterns lead to differences in health outcomes. And then another clue is you've heard from at this conference a lot of doctors who are using diet as an intervention tool. You heard Dr. Montgomery talking about this last night. And these doctors will all report that there's no difference in how the patients respond. It's not based on their ethnicity. It's not based on their genetic profile or whether or not these diseases run in their family. It's based on compliance on the diet. Now, this is an example I like to use because it's just so crystal clear. The Pima Indians, there are two groups of Pima Indians. One lives in Mexico and one lives in Arizona, and some of them are even members of the same immediate family. But their diets and lifestyles are quite different, as you might imagine. The Mexican Pima are very physically active people, and they eat a grain, fruit, vegetable-based diet, while the Arizona Pima eat a diet high in animal protein and fat, and they're not quite as physically active. And look at the striking difference in the statistics. The Mexican Pima, the diabetes rate is 6.9%, and for the Arizona Pima, it's 38%. Okay, so you're talking about pretty identical genetic predisposition, but widely divergent diets producing widely divergent results. And we could go through I have a lot of charts that I use in some of the classes I teach where we show like sibling disease concordance. And about the highest you ever find is psoriasis at 17%. The rest of it's quite a bit lower. Now, this is a chart that I think makes this diet issue really crystal clear. The original research, this is my original research, by the way, and the original charts had 60 countries, but that makes for a very tiny slide that none of you'd be able to interpret from here. So we use this chart in Forks Over Knives, and what I did to develop this is I contacted the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations based in Italy, and I was able to get the food production rates in 60 different countries. That's what we were looking for. And food production mirrors food intake. In other words, what farmers produce in a country is usually pretty closely related to what people will eat. And just to let you know what this project involved, when we got it, it wasn't all packaged up like this. We got it, these charts went on for days and days because it had every vegetable and it had every fruit and every seed. We had to add all this stuff up. I had interns in the office that spent time on this. Then we managed to do some matching with the World Health Organization and look at the death rates from heart disease and cancer in those same 60 countries and match them up. And so if you look here, you'll see that in Uganda, the percentage of calories from animal foods is really low at 6.4%, and you end up with a little over 49 per 100,000 cancer death rate and 128 point something per 100,000 for heart disease. And you'll see what happens it's not a straight line, by the way, and it never is, but you'll see what happens as the amount of animal food increases, that death rate from heart disease and cancer goes up quite a bit. And if you'll see down here, our carnivorous Hungarians eating 30.7% of calories from animal food, and we're up to 328.5 per 100,000 on cancer mortality versus 49.4 per 100,000. That's a big difference. And look at the difference over here on, these are little things for me to see from the distance, 651.3 versus 128.8 per 100,000. I mean, it just doesn't get any more clear than this. And I'll never forget the day that we started putting the graph together for the 60 countries. And like I said, you never get a straight line, and you don't know what you're getting into when you get piles and piles of data from these organizations. But as we were plotting the countries, the picture started. We've got 20 countries in, and we're all smiling at each other and high-fiving because this thing was showing clearly the more animal foods you eat, the worse it gets, and we could probably do that for every disease. But after we spent 60 hours, 4 of us, doing this, we didn't think we wanted to do it for any more diseases. So this is it. This is all you get. But I think it's pretty clear.